Beat writers. Man, that was a generation from another time. What does it mean to be a beat writer? Ask yourself, is that the same thing as being a journalist? Does it mean you're covering more than one topic? I know I can say my beat is anything Marvel related for the website I write for. However, being honest, the term beat writer has been mangled and misused and expanded to include dozens and dozens of poets and prose writers, who most of them never had any connection with the movement itself, and many of whom do not in any clear sense exhibit any of the aspects of beats. Ah, here we are, beat writers. They were the literary stars of the 1950s and the 60s. Being the Beat generation were rebellious, experimental wordsmiths, notable pioneers of the craft are Allen Ginsberg, guy's really out there, Jack Kerouac, Ken Kesey, Amiri Baraka, I'm so sorry if I'm butchering your names, William S. Burroughs, and others left highly influential marks in literature, music, film, and culture. And here they are sitting in a Seinfeld looking restaurant. Ah, Mr. Allen Ginsberg. Allen Ginsberg, 1926 to 1927. He was one of the most famous of the beat poets of the 1950s, outliving most of his contemporaries and always staying relevant as a spokesman for the counterculture and for personal freedom. Okay. Here we have the Beat movement, also called the Beat Generation, American social literary movement originating in the 1950s, centered out of bohemian artist communities of San Francisco's North Beach, Los Angeles, Venice West, New York City's Greenwich Village. Its adherents self-styled as beat, meaning weary, but later also connoting a musical sense of beatific spirituality and other meanings and decisively called beatniks. They advocated personal release, purification, and illumination through the heightened sensory awareness that might be induced by drugs, jazz, sex, or the disciplines of Zen Buddhism. The Beats and their advocates found the joylessness and purposelessness of modern society sufficient justification for both withdrawal and protest. Okay, here we have Jack Kerouac. Original name Jean-Louis Lebris Kerouac. I'm not French, but wait, I am. Born March 12th, 1922 in Lowell, Massachusetts. He died October 21st, 1969 in St. Pete's, Florida. American novelist, poet, and leader of the Beat movement. His famous book, On the Road, 1957, had broad cultural influence before it was recognized for its literary merits. On the Road captured the spirit of its time as no other work the 20th century had since F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby tore all our hearts out at the end. Spoilers! Slide 6. I give you the first poetry slams, people. As you can see, Kerouac is up on stage in a writer's nightmare, but it looks like he's comfortable under the lights. Now, I don't know about you, I'd be a little scared, but then again, the beats were a different breed. Beat poets sought to transform poetry into an expression of genuine lived experience. They read their work sometimes to the accompaniment of progressive jazz and such beat strongholds as the Coexistence, Bagel Shop, and Lawrence Ferlinghetti Light City Lights bookstore in San Francisco. The verse was frequently chaotic and liberally sprinkled with obscenities and frank references to sex, all intended to liberate poetry from the academic garbage, as they called it. Allen Ginsberg's Howl became the most represented poetic expression of the Beat movement. The poem itself embodied the essence of the Beat's voice. Its first performance in 1955 is a disorderly celebration, and the obscenity trial in 1957 followed its publication showed the movement's social and political relevance. By about 1960, the beat movement as a fad had begun to fade, though its experiments with form and its social engagement continued and had lasting effects. The movement producing a number of significant writers, including Ferlinghetti, Gregory Corso, Philip Whaley, and Gary Snyder. The poet Leroy Jones has also been part of the Beat Circle and published her work in his magazine Eugen, though he broke with the movement in the 1960s. And here's a quote right here from Allen Ginsberg. There is not beat poetry or a beat novel or a beat painting. Beat is a poetic conception and attitude toward the world. Interesting. Pretty good quote. Here we have William S. Burroughs. He was a Beat Generation writer known for his startling non-tradition accounts of drug culture, most famously in the book, quote, Naked Lunch. As you can see right here, this is Junkie. William S. Burroughs became one of the founding figures of the Beat movement. An addict for years, he crafted books like, quote, Junkie and Naked Lunch, which were heroin, often grotesque looks at drug culture. He is cited as a major influence on countercultural figures in the world of music as well, and worked on several recording projects. That book looks like it'd be banned in my house. Slide 11. Trying different career paths to no avail, Burroughs eventually traveled to New York and met writers Ginsberg and Kerouac. In about the mid 1940s, the three would be heralded as the Beat movement, an artistic outpouring of non-traditional free expression. During the mid 1940s, Burroughs and Kerouac collaborated on a novel about the murder of a friend, and the hippos were boiled in their tanks. Where did people come up with these titles? That was published decades later posthumously. Burroughs developed a relationship with Joan Vollmer during this time as well. They lived together as a husband and wife starting in 1945. At the time, Burroughs was also open about his attraction to men, and he and Ginsberg had been lovers. The plot thickens. Here we have Ken Kesey, the novelist. He wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and was credited with helping to usher in the era of psychedelic drugs in the 1960s. I mean, you had the Bat Watusi, you had the Adam West Batman show, and you had drugs on every corner. What could go wrong? Ken Kesey attended Stanford University and later served in as an experimental subject and aide in a hospital, an experience that led to his 1962 novel, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That book was followed by sometimes a great notion and several works of nonfiction that detailed Kesey's transformation from novelist to the guru of the hippie generation. Make love, man, not war. Peace, man, peace. While attending Stanford in 1960, Kesey volunteered as a paid experimental subject in a study conducted by the U.S. Army, in which he was given mind-altering drugs, always fun, and asked to report on their effects. He also worked as an attendant in a hospital psychiatric ward. These experiences served as the basics for his 1962 novel, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which examined the abuses of the system against the individual. In the 1975, what a great year, my dad says, the book was made into a film directed by Milos Forman and starring good old Jack Nicholson. Casey famously hated the script and refused to watch the film, but many other people didn't. After receiving much critical acclaim, it would go on to take all 5 of the major Academy Awards for Best Picture, Director, Screenplay, Actor, and Actress. And to note, in 1979, Nicholson would go on and play Jack Torrance in The Shining. And give me a drink, Lloyd. Wendy, the love of my life. I'm going to bash your brains out. Nicholson had a great run in the 70s, to say the least. So there it is, guys. Thank you for enjoying my presentation. It was a little long. And I just want to end with a quote. The so called Beat Generation was a whole bunch of people of all different nationalities who came to the conclusion that society sucked. John Selwyn Holmes. Now, I don't know about you. The 50s was a weird time, but so was the 60s. Because the 50s was after the Red Scare and everything, and you're coming now into the what the nuclear family really meant. But at the same time, the nuclear family was a creative illusion. So yeah, and then the 60s, everybody was popping drugs left and right, making war, not peace, you know. Man, all I can say is if we had a time machine, would you want to enter it?